This is an introduction to Atom, the agent-centric DEP meta-ontology. Atom offers a novel way of building interoperable, distributed apps and to even go beyond apps. With Atom and apps built on Atom, a community, company, group or team of users is in full control over their communication infrastructure, to the extent that they can easily add new ways of expressing themselves, and very quickly encode their specific interaction and communication patterns into high-level social DNA, and thus build distributed digital spaces tailored for their specific social system for their concrete culture. In order to have these customized digital spaces be able to communicate and to operate, Atom introduces and defines social organisms as an agent-centric and less rigid alternative to DAOs. Social organisms are fractal agents, super agents, meaning they can be included in higher-level social organisms and thus create fractal hierarchies of these sovereign group spaces. To be more specific, these are not hierarchies, but holochies, because each social organism is a complete and independent whole, to the extent that the community can choose their interaction patterns, as well as the underlying Web3 or centralized technology used to implement it. Atom makes this possible by being a spanning layer, an agent-centric spanning layer, meaning that it is based on the fundamental concepts of agents, humans or users, and how they organize into social organisms. In order to enable many-to-many mappings between apps and data storage, sharing and integrity layers. Atom is congruent in this with the agent-centric approach of Holochain. And I created Atom intended as an extension to Holochain. But once we introduce subjective and semantic perspectives as a concrete thing, other technologies like central databases and backends, and other decentralized solutions like IPFS, Ethereum, and basically anything can be pulled in as well, and formalized abstractly as languages. Atom languages are one of the three core concepts that together form the trinity of Atom's agent-centric meta-ontology. And that is agents, languages, and perspectives. Agents use languages to create expressions. Languages both represent the grammar that defines the structure and inherent integrity of these expressions, and also the storage and distribution mechanisms. Atom doesn't care or restrict which technology languages use. It treats each language like a protocol by using the language code's hash as its unique URI schema. Expressions are like objects, but they are timestamped and signed by the author with their DID key. So languages and expressions are objective. Every agent resolving an expression URI through its respective language will see the same signed data. Perspectives, on the other hand, are subjective. Agents may have many local and private perspectives that represent subjective associations between objective expressions. As such, perspectives embody semantics. They are like the agent's second brain or Zettelkasten, but semantic web style, where each association is a triplet of subject, predicate, object, like RDF triplets. But also agent-centric, since these associations in the perspective, the links, are signed expressions as well. Perspectives are the main interface for Atom apps. The suggestion baked into Atom is that apps treat these private graphs, perspectives, as their storage, like a graph database. Different apps can share the same perspectives as agents use perspectives for higher level contexts. Atom defines, for instance, that every agent has one public agent perspective, which is like their profile in the Atom web. The links in there are statements about the agents themselves, associating the agent's DID address with addresses of other expressions. One app may want to add a profile picture stored on IPFS to this public profile. Another app might want to write a public post. And yet another one might add some countersigned CV information stored on Holochain. These apps might have an opinion about which languages to use, and even bring their own new languages. But they are ultimately decoupled from the languages and thus the lower part of the whole networking stack. The nexus point where UIs and languages meet is the agent. Trick number 1. Neighborhoods. Through a recombination of Atom's trinity of root concepts, perspectives can be shared mutably, co-creatively as neighborhoods. The main thing needed for this is a link language. A language to share the added and removed links of a local perspectives with the other agents. And we need a neighborhood language to reference, to talk about a particular neighborhood. Once created, the neighborhood has an expression address. Other agents can use this address to find the neighborhood and its link language in order to download and install that link language. Any mutation of any local perspective will now be shared between these agents. As such, neighborhoods are intersubjective. Note here that by applying the abstract concept of Atom languages for the implementation of the neighborhoods, these link languages can be implemented with different technologies. While the Atom default uses a holochain implementation for full decentralization, an existing community, or maybe even company, might already run an intranet, or maybe even a matrix server. Wrapping the existing infrastructure as link language means users can use Atom languages and apps without having to switch their main infrastructure. So, Atom neighborhoods are generic and technology-independent, decentralized group collaboration spaces. They are the abstract representation of what a chat channel, a Facebook group, a Discord server, or a Trello board is. With neighborhoods, a community can try different apps and different storage and networking layers without having to change or recreate the group. Semantic data shared in the neighborhood stays in the neighborhood, independent of apps or languages. Trick number 2, social DNA. As we said before, specific UIs care about specific graph structures that they visualize and edit. The UI code is coupled to that graph structure if we approach it naively. I mean, it's already great that different apps can share portions of the graph and neighborhoods. But with these perspectives being subjective to the agents, is it really a good idea to have UI codes strongly coupled to that? And how could those UIs interoperate more without having to get coupled to each other? The answer is Atom's concept of social DNA. We just move the information that a certain graph structure has a particular meaning into the perspective itself. That can easily be done through the Prolog engine that Atom spawns for each perspective. Those engines get fed with the link data of that perspective. This allows us to recognize and give names to meaningful graph patterns. And that in turn allows us to attach graph mutations or named methods or actions to these patterns. This is just like defining a class and then call functions on these objects. Just that the objects consist of subjective semantic links. Should we maybe call them subjects instead? Anyway, perspectives or neighborhoods with social DNA are self-contained, adaptable semantic systems. They are not coupled to specific decentralized or centralized storage technology anymore, because we pulled those out into the languages. And with social DNA, they are also not coupled to user interfaces anymore. Perspectives and neighborhoods with the social DNA are pure semantic data with the application or domain logic that we would need in order to alter that data. Social DNA where apps and UIs can now show possible actions dynamically, based on the subjects and actions defined in the DNA. And that means users can thus add high-level features to their own subjective and semantic data, stored in their own perspective or neighborhood. And they can add these features without having to touch storage or networking layers, and without having to create their own UI. Which at the same time doesn't exclude the possibility of having special UIs added later or by somebody else. But agents in a neighborhood can instantly try a new interaction pattern on the fly. If we zoom out a bit, looking at the Atom stack, so we have Atom apps at the top, and then we have subjective perspectives and social DNA in between, and objective languages at the bottom. So now, from a software architecture standpoint, we could say this is very similar to like an agent-centric version of MVC, Model View Controller. Trick number 3, the last one, social organisms. So, social organisms are basically neighborhoods, but with a fixed DNA, with designated input and outputs, and with a special DNA in the form of flows. which basically just combines several actions into a flow. So we could look at these like digestion flows. An organism can now receive in its input any expression of any language. The social DNA in flow format is now a shared agreement on how to process that input, how to project intersubjective associations onto it until it is completely processed and can be shared as an expression of the whole. This is a simple example of a task tracking flow implemented in social DNA. If you want to understand the full implementation on the right, there's a longer version of this video. All I want to say here is that the flow chart on the left conveys all the meaning of the code on the right. And there will soon be a graphical social DNA editor to enable mere mortals to encode their interaction patterns, their decision-making solutions, their reputation handling schemes, any expectation regarding a certain back and forth of communication within a group. Encode that as social DNA so that it can run within a decentralized social organism. To summarize, Adam's core is a trinity of agents, languages, and perspectives. These private subjective perspectives can be shared in an intersubjective way in neighborhoods through linked languages. And then adding social DNA that defines how a group digests information, neighborhoods can be turned into social organisms. Apps and UIs always just deal with perspectives, semantic graph databases. Whether they are shared as neighborhoods or social organisms, it's the same interface for the UI. And all of this happens by transcending and including decentralized and centralized networking stacks. So that is Adam, the agent-centric DApp meta-ontology, or agent-centric spanning layer, or an engine to rapidly build highly interoperable social networks and group collaboration and communication software.